In this segment, I want to talk about statistics. And as you read in the lead-in PDF to this video, we're going to talk about the different meanings of the word and define it as we normally do with terms when we start any study in any field. With a lot of things in sabermetrics, we start with Bill James. And he wrote this. This is a quote from one of his books. It is important to understand this. I never wrote about statistics. I never wrote about, quote, old statistics or, quote, new statistics or any statistics at all. Although I have been described, referred to, labeled, and introduced many thousands of times as a statistician, this is simply an error. I have never been a statistician. So what is statistics, and why do new sabermetricians need to study what statistics are? First, it's important to understand statistics, the actual word, is used various ways by people. First, a statistic is a measurement, a piece of information, datum, the singular of data. It's just a metric, a descriptive metric that represents something we want to measure. That's one use of the word statistics. The other use of the word statistics is the field of scholarship, the science of collecting, classifying, and understanding data using mathematics. So if the two uses of the word statistics is slightly confusing, you're not alone. A lot of new students get confused by this. One way to help clarify this might be to consistently use the word metric when you're referring to the one definition of the word statistics, the metric or the measurement or the piece of information. And then just reserve the use of statistics as the field of scholarship. So when you refer to statistics, you're talking about the actual practice of collecting and analyzing data. And the word metric or measurement would be a more specific term for what a lot of people refer to as the single statistic that describes something. That might help clarify some of the confusion around the use of this word. We're going to study Henry Chadwick later on in this module. And Henry Chadwick is probably the most important writer in the history of baseball, but certainly one of the most important sabermetricians. And we'll learn all about how in the early game he would pay attention and describe the game very carefully. And he started recording the number of outs and the number of runs that players would generate inside the game. And in the beginning, outs and runs were the important statistics, according to Chadwick. And he kept very good track of them, of all the games he observed. Now, I want to distinguish between just counting the outs and runs versus making a rate stat. So there's two key things here. When you look at metrics, things that measure something, they can either be rate stats or they can be counting stats. And in Chadwick's case, he would just watch a game and accumulate the number of outs and the number of runs. We'll hear all about that in the history section of this module, how Chadwick went about the recording of the information of the game. Now, rate stats, for example, in Chadwick's case, he would take the accumulated outs after realizing that there was another way to think about outs and runs, was by looking at it in a rate stat. By summarizing the data, Henry Chadwick created some other beginning rate statistics. Runs per game and outs per game. And as crude as they were, they helped determine more information as needed around players' performance. Even at the beginning, started distinguishing between counting stats and rate stats. So whenever a new data analyst starts looking at baseball or any other system, first understand what that metric represents, whether it's accumulating stats like a counting stat. And in modern baseball, we can talk about counting statistics, things like strikeouts, strikeouts accumulating by a pitcher through the whole season, or home runs accumulated by batters through the whole season. These things are counting statistics. Now we can talk about home runs per plate appearance. Now that's a rate stat. If I talk about home runs per plate appearance by batters or home run rates, that's another way to consider measurement of power of a player, either by counting it or by putting it into a rate statistic. Same thing with strikeouts for pitchers. You can have a counting stat for strikeouts, or you can start counting strikeouts per batter faced. Now, strikeouts per batter faced is a rate statistic, and that might help better understand what you want to accomplish in your data analytics. So understanding counting stats versus rate stats is a first step that all sabermetricians should understand.